We are still in the Book of Beginnings, Canto 2, the issue. Namaste. Namaste. And we see here that Savitri has to go through so many things. She has to go through pain and suffering. She has already found the knowledge from Narad that her husband, or her soul's companion, I would say, is going to pass away in 12 months. And she's a young girl, maybe in her late teens, and she has to suffer all of this. But she's also an emanation of the Divine Mother. And being that emanation, she is going to realize in time who she is, Savitri, daughter of the sun. So we will begin with where I left off. About death. Death stays the journeying discoverer life. What does stay mean here? Stay means simply stops. Doesn't hold it back, it stops this journeying discoverer life. Or so we think. But Sri Aurobindo is going to tell us in the future, in Savitri, that death is a very positive thing. Because when the human body cannot grow anymore, what is it going to do if it has eternal life? Illness, loss of friends, loss of memory, all of these things. Who would want to live longer in that state? And therefore death comes along to give life the opportunity to rise into those planes of consciousness where there is total rest. And Sri Aurobindo also tells us that for most of us, and this will shock you, the rest is only 2 years, and we take a new birth. Only 2 years in that place of rest, and we're ready for the new birth. If we're slightly evolved, we will choose our next family, because that family will give us the opportunity to work on things within that we didn't have in the past life. So, we begin. We have read about the animal browsing in the sacred fence. We've heard about the gold hawk, which Nalini has told us is the supramental, or at least the highest vital. So we begin with these words from Sri Aurobindo. And it's very, very, very important here. And I have to go back to the beginning of the page, because if you can see here, all these lines and all these things that are going on are definitions from Mother and Sri Aurobindo. So we'll begin on page, is it 18? Yes, 18. A chattel and a plaything of time's lords. What is a chattel? Anybody? A slave. Simply a slave. A chattel and a plaything of time's lords. Are we not all playthings of time? We have our routines, we have our likes and our dislikes. We have our ills and we have times of health. We have times of joy and sorrow. So we are chattel and a plaything of time's lords. Or, he says, or one more pawn who comes destined to be pushed on a slow move forward, One slow move forward on a measureless board in the chess play of the earth soul with doom. So we know about checkers and chess and how the different pieces can move. And this is the way life moves us. One moment we're walking along, and the next moment we're hit by a car. Or we see an accident. Or we realize, oh, I forgot my pad. So, now, this is the human figure drawn by time. But for Savitri, he says, a conscious frame was here, a self-born force. The word self-born I've talked about quite often. None of us are self-born, because a self-born force chooses exactly what it will do in this earth atmosphere. And there are only two self-born forces that we talk about today. They are Mother and Sri Aurobindo. But they have been in the past too, in the form of Krishna, in the form of Rama, in some ways in the form of Buddha. So we see that this is a compromise when the soul comes down from the highest realms of consciousness and decides to take a human body. Now, generally, what happens is that we forget who we were. How many of us can say, oh, I was this and this and this body, and before that, and before that, and before that? No, we don't know those things yet. So we're going to see now what it is with Savitri. And I'm going to pick up here. And I believe I said this last week. A jail is this immense material world. Now the word jail here is spelled G-A-O-L. And it's the old spelling of J-A-I-L. So we continue. We see that Savitri is going to fight and resist these negative forces. And Sri Aurobindo says, pain with its lash, joy with its silver bribe. Guard the wheels circling immobility. And I told you last week, I got to this, I ended with this particular line. He capitalizes the word wheel. And the black people in America had a vision, and they put it into song. A wheel in a wheel. The little wheel run by man, and the big wheel run by the grace of God. Centuries-old vision. Sri Aurobindo speaks often of this wheel. And in his essays, Divine and Human, he says, the infinite pauses always in the finite. The finite arrives always in the infinite. This is the wheel that circles forever through time and eternity. A bond is put on the high climbing mind. What is a bond? Well, we can say it's sort of a fetter, a tie There are many, many definitions of bond, but this is the most pertinent one. So this high climbing mind always has a bond on it. And that bond is the past that we all have. We can call it karma, but it's not a negative thing at all. And we'll go into karma one day in great length. A bond is put on the high climbing mind, a seal on the too large, wide open heart. Death stays the journeying discoverer life. Thus is the throne of the inconscient safe, while the tardy coilings of the eons pass, and the animal browses in the sacred fence. I will share with you again some of my dear friends who I would meet regularly. They were we can say, the elite of the ashram. Nolini, Parichand, Pavitra, and many, many Aurobindo Basu, many others. So Alok Pandey, who's a very brilliant man, I believe he has a photographic memory, he says, this animal in the sacred fence, this material world, more specifically the human body, is the sacred fence, a yajna, Vedi, for the gods to descend. But the forces of death and darkness have usurped and occupied the field now, and instead of the divine, whose law must establish itself here, instead of a divine life intended for earth, the sacred place meant for the gods has become a field for the play of an ignorant animal consciousness, hardly awake and half dead. It is this ignorant and obscure consciousness that is being termed as the animal. Amal Kiran, the great poet of the Sri Aurobindo ashram, and the one who wrote hundreds of letters to Sri Aurobindo on Savitri, writes, "The animal browses in the sacred fence connotes the defilement of the psycho-spiritual nature by one's lower vital being." And Madhav Pandit says, the animal represents the lower rajasic nature. The sacred fence is the human being with all its scaffolding. And the gold hawk can cross the skies no more. Now here we come with two lines, and I have so many definitions, but I have to share them with you because they're again from Alok, Amal, Nolini, Madhav Pandit, and many others. I'll just go through a few. Alok says the gold hawk is the soul or the psychic being. It also represents the powers and forces of the intuitive mind that descend from the supramental heights and enter the human mind. Amal simply says, gold hawk is the spiritual mental being. Spiritual mental being. Nolini, the hawk is the symbol of the vital. The gold hawk is the vital soul transformed. Madhav says the hawk is the high-soaring bird, the soul embodied in higher nature. So back to Savitri. But one stood up and lit the limitless flame, arraigned by the dark power that hates all bliss, in the dire court where life must pay for joy, sentenced by the mechanic justicer. What is a justicer? Simply a judge. To the afflicting penalty of man's hopes, her head she bowed not to the stark decree, bearing her helpless heart to destiny's stroke. So bows and must the mind-born will in man, obedient to the statutes fixed of old. These statutes are the established laws and rules that we live on. We can call them fate, we can call them karma. But we all live at the stage we're on now, which is the lowest stage: matter, body, life, and mind. When we rise above this stage, everything is different. Everything is new. We do not see horror as something horrible, but just an aspect of joy and beauty. So, man is obedient to these statutes, even moral rules fixed of old, admitting without appeal the nether gods. In her, the superhuman cast its seed. Inapt to fold its mighty wings of dream, her spirit refused to hug the common soil, or finding all life's golden meanings robbed, compound with earth, struck from the starry list, or quench with black despair the God-given light. This compound with earth for a while confused me. And I went to Nolini. In his very terse way of speaking, he said, mix with. So she wasn't going to mix with earth. She's not going to be struck from the starry list. Even finding all these golden meanings that she came down with robbed, her spirit refused to hug the common soil. Now, what is this referring us to? Well, it's referring us to the negative forces that came down perfect and pure. And Mother tells us as a parable that these forces saw how powerful they were, and they changed into negative forces. And that's why we have these adverse forces. But they are also here to propel us forward, to move us forward. Every time we find a difficulty, a challenge, something that seems impossible or impassable, we have to face it. And we do. Time is not a problem. It may take years, it may take months, it may take a decade or a century, doesn't matter. We are going to face all negativity and turn it into beauty and love and joy. Sat Chit Ananda. Accustomed to the eternal and the true, her being conscious of its divine founts, asked not from mortal frailty pain's relief. patched not with failure, bargain, or compromise. A work she had to do, a word to speak. Writing the unfinished story of her soul in thoughts and actions graved in nature's book. Graved here means engraved in nature's book. Carved or sculpted in nature's book. She accepted not to close the luminous page, cancel her commerce with eternity, or set a signature of weak assent to the brute balance of the world's exchange. A force in her that toiled since earth was made, accomplishing in life the great world plan, pursuing after death immortal aims, repugned to admit frustration's barren role. Repugned, opposed, resisted. Forfeit the meaning of her birth in time. Obey the government of the casual fact, or yield her high destiny up to passing chance. In her own self, she found her high recourse. She matched with the iron law her sovereign right. Her single will opposed the cosmic rule. To stay the wheels of doom, this greatness rose. At the unseen's knock upon her hidden gates, her strength made greater by the lightning's touch, awoke from slumber in her heart's recess. It bore the stroke of that which kills and saves. Across the awful march no eye can see, barring its dreadful route no will can change. She faced the engines of the universe. A heart stood in the way of the driving wheels. Its giant workings paused in front of a mind. Its stark conventions met the flame of a soul. Now Sri Aurobindo begins to speak to us. A magic leverage suddenly is caught that moves the veiled ineffable's timeless will. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. Then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A lonely thought becomes omnipotent. I'll go just a few minutes more. We have Om Choir at 5:30. So I came a little late and I'm extending our session on Savitri Satsang. So let me read those lines again, because they are something we should take within us and hold carefully within us and allow nothing to disturb. A prayer, a master act, a king idea, can link man's strength to a transcendent force, then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A lonely thought becomes omnipotent. Now Sri Aurobindo is going to tell us what is here now, or seems to be here now. All now seems nature's massed machinery, an endless servitude to material rule, and long determination's rigid chain. So let me speak to you a little bit about that. What is this endless servitude to material rule? We have to eat, don't we? We have to sleep, don't we? We get pains, don't we? We get illnesses. All of these things are a servitude or a slave, a bondage to material rule. Right now, much of the world, but not all of it anymore, is a slave to material rule. Our life is based on what we can see, what we can feel, what we can taste, what we can hear, etc. And that's the material rule. But he adds another line, and long determination's rigid chain, her firm and changeless habits aping law. Now the word aping here is very important, as are all the words in Savitri. But we cannot begin to understand them with this limited mind. Oh, people who are in the upper levels of consciousness, in the higher and illumined and intuitive and overmind, yes, they can understand them. But certainly I'm not, and many of us are not. So we see that these changeless habits that ape law, aping like an ape. So these habits that ape law are firm and they are changeless. They can only change when we rise into a higher state of consciousness. Even the laws change. The laws that we have now are not the laws of the higher planes. And these laws are also graded. They're not fixed on one plane. They're graded. So we understand some of them. Christ, of course, said, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not do this, the 10 Commandments. So those are graded laws for everyone on the lower existence. So I continue. Her firm and changeless habits, aping law, her empire of unconscious deft device. Deft device is a skillful, clever device. Annul the claim of man's free human will. He too is a machine amid machines. A piston brain pumps out the shapes of thought. A beating heart cuts out emotions' modes. An insentient energy fabricates a soul. Or the figure of the world reveals the signs of a tide chance, repeating her old steps in circles around matter's binding posts.